We're excited to have Mary Lisanti, who runs the Lisanti Fund, which is a small cap fund.
Thank you for having me.
So really excited to have you on board with us. Just for our viewers, we run these very disciplined asset allocated portfolios, and we allocate to small cap and specifically small cap growth stocks. And after some really deep dive due diligence that we do on every single one of our investments, Mary's small cap growth fund came up as a top tier investment, and we allocated to that portfolio quite a few years ago now, right, Mary?
Yeah.
And obviously we have not been disappointed. So let's talk about last year first. Let's tell us what happened.
Well, last year, as you know, was really one for the record books. I mean, we had both the worst quarter in the history of the Russell 2000 index, which is the index of small cap stocks, and we had the second best quarter. So we really had the reflection of a recession recovery in a very compressed time frame, because as you know, markets anticipate. So when COVID hit our shores and people began to realize we were going to be shut down for a while, the market went down and down and down. And then the Fed basically came in to support the economy. And what happened was, coming out of it, was a lot of the smaller companies started to do really well. And they continued to do well. And as you know, in the fourth quarter of the year, they did exceptionally well as people began to anticipate the economy reopening. And then, honestly, through the downturn, many of these companies were forced to get really creative and be really clever about how they marketed their products. So the one theme that came through for us was the companies had much, much better earnings growth than people expected and better revenue growth than people expected. And that was true for every company except those that were being physically shut down was very difficult. So the restaurants struggled, although many of them did take out. The brick and mortar retail stores that weren't online struggled. But a lot of these companies were able to move their businesses online. So it was really interesting to watch how the companies adapted and how they grew. And we did something very similar to what you described. We basically, early on, based on our research, we thought this would be here for a while. So we moved to the companies that we thought would flourish as people were forced to stay in and to work from home. And then as we started to anticipate the economy reopening, we took a barbell approach. And we basically moved a little bit more towards companies that would benefit as the world goes back to the new normal. Because as you know, markets anticipate 9 to 12 months out in small cap land. And so you want to basically be a little bit ahead of the curve. And it worked very well for us. We were up, as you know, 52.85% for the year versus 34.63% for the index. And, 3-year numbers were 23.5% versus 16.2. So, your timing was exquisite. Our 5-year numbers are 20.9 versus 16.36. But again, it's been a very good environment for active management, and one that I think will continue, at least in small cap.
So Mary, I just want one quick thing, and then I know Mike wants to jump in on this one, but it really is about security selection, right? It's about stock selection. Not all small cap stocks went up last year. So what areas of what sectors, what do you think really obviously worked last year, but more important, what sectors are you looking at? What's your theme going forward?
So one of the big things that really helped us last year was healthcare. And one of the differentiators for us, as you know, is that we invest in the biopharma space. The biopharma space is now about 20% of the Russell 2000 Growth Index, which is our benchmark. And we have about 15% of the portfolio in a wide range of biotech stocks and diagnostic tools and companies that help the manufacturing process. And so this has been a very big driver of performance, I think in part because the vaccine manufacturing really focused people on the fact that biotechnology techniques enable companies to come to market faster with drugs. They shorten the development timeframe, and they're much more effective. So what's going on with the vaccines that they were developed in 9 months is not a fluke, right? Normally it takes 10 years to develop a vaccine. But using the new techniques, you can develop a very effective vaccine in about a year. And this is true for a lot of other drug states as well. And so that was an important driver. Now, we looked for platform companies, and we were looking in the same place, unbeknownst to us, the corporations were, because we had several companies acquired in the year, most recently in Myocardia, which was acquired at a significant premium. But we think that that space probably continues to be an area of great innovation. And we think it's going to continue to do very well as we go forward because of all the innovation that's going on and the fact that it's really shortening time to market and it's lowering costs for people. And we think that that's really a win-win. So that was an important driver. And then in the technology space, it really was picking companies that would benefit. This distributed computing world is a brave new world in that when you move to work from anywhere, the whole structure of the organization has to change. The whole infrastructure of the IT, the way you've set up your information technology changes. And it basically means you have to redo everything. And so it's a very different way to look at the world. It requires very different security, requires very different processes. And there's a number of companies that help corporations with that, and they really have flourished. I mean, you know, you've talked about Zoom, you've talked about some of the other companies, but there are security companies such as Varonis Systems, which is designed to secure data wherever it's put. And so this was the perfect environment for a company like that. So some of it was, you know, the work we had done, as you know, we use themes, we look at how the world is going to be and what's changing. And that focus really helped in terms of stock selection. And individual companies can have very different outcomes based on the approach they take and what they're doing. So even in the airline space, you know, we purchased Allegiant Travel. Now, Allegiant's different from the other airlines in that they package vacations together for people, and they take people from small towns. They used to take them to Mexico and Nevada and places like that, and they pivoted in the pandemic to take them to national parks and to take them to places that were a little bit out of the way, to take them to the Badlands. And so this is a company that basically is cash flow break even, all right, is poised to have significant profitability, has much better statistics than any other airline because it really does more than just be an airline. And we basically got it at a very good price because people got scared. And so there were opportunities all throughout the year because it was really such an unusual year, but it's really, it was in every sector, it really was stock picking. And as you said, some of it is knowing what to avoid. Energy stocks, we didn't buy REITs, we didn't buy SNLs. You know, we really focused on identifying companies that were a little different. And there's a lot of those in small cap growth land.
Mike, you want to?
Yeah, so Mary, to that point, in the last 5 or 7 years, another expression that we keep hearing over and over again is disruptive technology. And I would think that small cap land presents numerous opportunities of you really being on the cutting edge of discovering companies potentially disruptive before they get into the mainstream. So would you say that your process has changed over the last 20 years in terms of what you look for in a company, or is the process, as far as you're concerned, pretty much the same?
So the core of the process is still the same, because basically what we're doing is we're looking for companies that are at the leading edge of change. And so the change might be different, okay, but we're talking to them about what do the next 3 to 5 years look like. And when you talk to a number of companies about things like that, what comes out are some very interesting factoids or thoughts. So one of the best examples I can give you is what's going on with the semiconductor space today. And we have several semiconductor stocks in our top 10, and there's a reason for that. We are currently so tight semiconductors that the auto manufacturers had to stop making cars this past week. They didn't have enough semiconductors. Now, this is through the worst recession we've seen since the 30s. Okay, they grew. When you think about 5G, and then you think about artificial intelligence, Applied Materials makes the point that you're going to need 8 to 10 times the semiconductor chips for artificial intelligence that you needed for the computer age. So we see secular growth in some of the semiconductors, and we think that that's we're early in identifying that at this point. So it's really the conversations with the companies. It's thinking about the future. It's thinking about how the world is going to change. And it's really being focused on that change that helps us. But we spend our days talking to company managements, and it's really where we get a lot of our information.
Hey, Mary, we have a few minutes left, so I want to squeeze in one or two more questions, if I may. The first, talk about the advantage that not every analyst in the world follows these small companies versus an Apple and a Microsoft or the larger companies. And then also, the fact that a lot of these small companies actually get bought out by the larger companies. You want to talk about your advantage, your competitive advantage?
Sure. So one of the things that is different about us is we're fairly experienced, all right? So the 3 senior people on the team together have almost 100 years of experience. And we've all grown up as analysts. We've all grown up doing research. And so when we sit down and talk to these companies, as you said, Dom, the average small cap company is followed by 3 analysts, and 2 of them don't keep earnings estimates on the company. So it's very inefficient. So you can get a lot of opportunity to outperform, because if you're willing to basically dig and talk, you get a lot of information. And we think that that's one of the keys to what we do, is sitting down and just talking to the companies and getting the information. One of the things that was important through this time, and I think will continue to be, is you had to be able to take qualitative information and translate it into quantitative stuff. By that I mean companies weren't giving guidance. So you had to understand what they meant when they said business was good. We grew up in a period of time where there was no guidance. So we understand how to take those data points and translate them into a P&L. And we think that it's a very important aspect of what we do.
Michael?
So Mary, going forward into 2021, do you still like healthcare and technology primarily, or is there another sector that you're getting excited about, or is there a subset of technology, for example, you love better than another sector?
Sure. Well, we like semiconductors over software, and we think alternative energy is real. We think that this administration will basically use policy to try and affect economic outcomes. First time in a long time we've seen that. And we think that, even before there's any subsidies or any spending on clean tech or clean energy, economically, it's just about wind and solar are just about a parity with gas and oil. And we think that's significant. And we're just at the beginning of that. So, there are going to be opportunities, again, because as you said, everything's new. We have a new administration, we have a new way of going, but we think that there are some really interesting long-term opportunities that will unfold over the next 4 years that could be very significant. And alternative energy is one of them.
So I apologize. I know we're getting the hook. If I can, I just want to ask Mary one more question, if I can. And it just popped into my head. Mary, with the new administration, many people were worried about, new regulations and a drag on the economy with the Senate being blue and Biden being president. But it sounds to me like you have sought out opportunities to take advantage of the fact that it's a Democratic Senate and a new administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of our process. We try and incorporate, everything that's changing. And I think that that's an important part. And the offset, I think, to some of the drags on the economy will be, we're going to get a huge improvement in productivity. This distributed computing, it's enormously positive in terms of productivity. So I believe, at least with the companies we're looking at, is that you're going to see a lift in profit margins that's going to offset a lot of the headwinds that people see. And as you said, we're going to have a lot of tailwinds that maybe weren't obvious 6 months ago for some of these areas.
Thank you. I know we went over our
Very
time.
have-
I apologize.
Can't thank you enough, and gratitude for the hard work and the years that you've been providing excellent returns for our clients. I look forward to doing this again. Hopefully you'll join us in the future.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Mary, have a great
Thank you,
evening.
Mary.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too. Happy New Year.